People think the strongest men fear bullets. They don't. They fear the moment they realize there's nothing they can do to stop someone they love from hurting. I never expected that moment to happen 37,000 feet above the Atlantic. Flight attendants are trained to stay calm. Business travelers are trained to ignore distractions. Parents learn to survive embarrassment. But nothing prepares an airplane full of strangers for the desperate cry of a baby who simply will not stop. The first sob echoed through the first-class cabin just after we reached cruising altitude. Then another. Then another. Within minutes, the cries had become relentless. Raw, hoarse, heartbreaking. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some reached for noise-canceling headphones. Others exchanged irritated glances before pretending to read their magazines again. I tried to focus on the paperback resting on my lap, but every cry tugged at something deep inside me. A mother never really forgets that sound, not even when the child isn't her own. My name is Olivia Carter, 29 years old, single mother, traveling home after speaking at a small pediatric sensory development conference in London. My 5-year-old daughter, Lily, was staying with my sister back in Boston, probably refusing vegetables while charming everyone around her. I smiled without realizing it. Then another scream cut through the cabin. Longer this time. The kind that made my chest tighten. The flight attendants hurried past again carrying warmed bottles, blankets, stuffed animals, anything that might help. Nothing did. Curiosity finally pulled my eyes toward the front row. The man sitting there looked nothing like the exhausted fathers I'd seen in pediatric waiting rooms. He wore a charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it seemed untouched by the 12-hour flight. Dark hair brushed neatly back. Thick beard framing a face carved from stone. The sleeves of his white shirt had rolled high enough to reveal black ink winding across a powerful forearm. Tattoos. Expensive watch. Shoulders broad enough to block the aisle. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. That somehow made him even more intimidating. His green eyes never left the tiny boy twisting helplessly in his arms. The baby couldn't have been older than 11 months. His face was bright red. Tiny fists clenched. Every breath arrived in panicked gasps before another piercing cry escaped. One attendant crouched beside the man. "I've tried warming the milk again, sir." A slight shake of his head. Another offered a different pacifier. Another failure. Someone from business class quietly whispered that perhaps the child was in pain. Another passenger suggested ear pressure. A retired pediatric nurse introduced herself. 10 minutes later, she returned to her seat looking defeated. The cabin slowly filled with something heavier than annoyance. Helplessness. The man thanked every person who tried. Always politely. Always quietly. Yet every passing minute deepened the shadows beneath his eyes. He gently kissed the baby's forehead. "I'm here, Noah." His voice barely reached my seat. "I'm here." Noah only cried harder. That's when I noticed something everyone else had missed. His tiny fingers weren't reaching for the bottle. They weren't pushing people away. They kept clawing desperately at the collar of his own shirt. Again and again, as though trying to escape something no one else could feel. My heartbeat slowed. I had seen that movement before. Not in hospitals. Not during emergencies. At home. Years ago. On nights when Lily became overwhelmed by bright lights, unfamiliar sounds, and too many strangers all at once. The realization settled over me like a whisper. This wasn't hunger. It wasn't stubbornness. And I was almost certain it wasn't the airplane. I closed my book, unfastened my seat belt, took one slow breath, then stood up, unaware that before this flight landed, one quiet decision would forever alter the lives of a lonely mother, a frightened little boy, and the dangerous man who looked at the world as though trusting another human being had become impossible. I stopped beside the first-class aisle. Every pair of eyes followed me, some curious, some annoyed, some silently begging me to succeed where everyone else had failed. The baby's cries hadn't weakened. They had become sharper, desperate. His tiny chest rose too fast, each breath ending in another scream that made my own heart ache. One of the flight attendants stepped in front of me with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We've already had a pediatric nurse try. I know. I'm not sure there's anything else we can. I don't think he's hungry." She blinked. "What?" "I don't think he's in pain either." Before she could answer, the man looked up. His green eyes met mine. Cold. Unreadable. The kind of eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little. He studied me for several long seconds. Can I help you? His voice was calm, deep, controlled, yet underneath it, I heard exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, the kind that comes from watching someone you love suffer while feeling completely powerless. I think I know what's happening. His jaw tightened. So did everyone else. Fair enough. I probably deserve that. I only need 30 seconds. No. The answer came instantly. Firm. Protective. His arms instinctively tightened around the little boy. Noah cried harder. I don't hand my son to strangers. I wouldn't either. Something flickered across his face. Not surprise. Recognition. Like he hadn't expected agreement. I slowly knelt beside the aisle instead of moving closer, making myself smaller, less threatening. I kept my voice low. I'm Olivia. He didn't answer. My daughter reacted exactly like this when she was little. Silence. Another piercing cry echoed through the cabin. I didn't look at Noah. I looked at his father. Too many lights. Another scream. Too many unfamiliar faces. Another desperate sob. Too many voices. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. I knew I had his attention. I don't think he's fighting you. I glanced toward Noah's tiny hands clawing at his shirt again. I think he's trying to escape everything around him. The man looked down. For the first time, he noticed it too. Those tiny fingers. Always reaching. Always pulling. Never asking for the bottle. Never asking to be held differently. His breathing slowed. What do you want me to do? It was barely above a whisper. I smiled gently. Nothing dramatic. I slipped the soft scarf from around my neck, folded it twice, then handed it to him. Cover his eyes. Confusion filled the faces around us. One businessman actually frowned. That's it, he muttered. I ignored him. Can you trust me for 10 seconds? The man stared at the scarf, then at me. Every instinct in him seemed to resist, yet every other solution had failed. Finally, he nodded. Carefully, he draped the lightweight fabric over Noah's forehead, shielding him from the bright cabin lights without covering his nose or mouth. Now, I lowered my own voice until it became little more than a breath. Don't bounce him. The flight attendants stopped moving. Soften your grip. He obeyed. Turn him toward your chest. Another adjustment. Now, I demonstrated with my own hands against my shoulders. Long, slow breaths. He inhaled, exhaled. Again, again. The cabin became strangely quiet. No one moved. No one even reached for a drink. 5 seconds. 8. 10. The screaming became whimpering. Then tiny hiccups. Then, nothing. Noah melted against his father's chest, one little hand still resting on Damien's shirt before slowly relaxing. The silence that followed felt louder than the crying had. Someone near the window gasped. A flight attendant covered her mouth. Another passenger quietly whispered, "My God." Damien didn't speak. He simply stared down at his sleeping son as though witnessing a miracle he couldn't explain. Then, very slowly, he lifted his eyes to mine. For the first time since I'd walked into first class, the dangerous man with the tattoos and the perfectly controlled voice looked completely defenseless. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The engines hummed steadily beneath our feet, but inside the first-class cabin, it felt as though time itself had stopped. Noah slept peacefully against Damien's chest. The tiny wrinkles around his eyes disappeared. His breathing settled into the slow, rhythmic pattern every parent longs to hear after a difficult night. Damien kept staring at him, almost afraid to move, almost afraid to believe it was real. "You," he finally said, his voice rougher than before. "What exactly did you do?" "Almost nothing." His eyes lifted to mine again. "That's impossible." I smiled. Babies don't always need more stimulation. I carefully folded my scarf as he handed it back. Sometimes they need less. He glanced around the brightly lit cabin. The conversations, the movement, the constant announcements, the overhead lights. Understanding slowly settled across his face. He was overwhelmed. I nodded. His nervous system was trying to protect itself. One of the flight attendants exhaled loudly. "I've worked international flights for 12 years. She shook her head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like that. It isn't magic." "No," Damien murmured quietly. "It isn't." His gaze lingered on Noah for another moment before extending his free hand toward me. "I'm Damien." His grip was firm, warm, controlled. Nothing about him suggested the dangerous aura that surrounded him only minutes earlier. Yet I couldn't ignore the details. The healed scar crossing one knuckle. The faded burn mark near his wrist. the tattoos disappearing beneath his rolled sleeve, hands that had lived a life far different from mine. Olivia. Thank you, Olivia. The sincerity in those 4 words caught me off guard. People with money often thank you politely. People carrying invisible burdens thank you differently. Damien sounded like someone who had nearly drowned. I was only helping. You helped my son. He emphasized the last word as though it explained everything. Perhaps it did. A little girl across the aisle peeked between the seats. Is the baby okay now? Damien looked at her. His entire face softened. He's sleeping. The girl smiled. Good. Then she skipped back to her mother. I watched Damien watching her. There was sadness there. Deep. Ancient. Not grief exactly. Loneliness. The kind no amount of wealth could erase. I'm sorry, I said quietly. He frowned. For what? You look like you haven't slept in weeks. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. That's surprisingly accurate. First baby. His eyes dropped to Noah. My only one. I hesitated before asking the question forming in my mind. His mother? Silence answered first. Then, she died. 2 simple words. No drama. No explanation. Just unbearable finality. Something tightened inside my chest. I'm so sorry. So am I. His expression remained perfectly composed. Only his eyes betrayed him. They looked older than the rest of his face. Much older. The flight attendant returned carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee. Courtesy of the airline. She placed one in front of Damien. One beside me. For saving the flight. I laughed softly. I think that's a little dramatic. It isn't. Several passengers nearby nodded. An older gentleman even raised his coffee cup toward me. Best thing I've seen all year. Embarrassment warmed my cheeks. I really didn't. You did, Damien interrupted gently. You gave my son peace. Those words settled somewhere deeper than compliments usually reached. I glanced at Noah again. His tiny hand had unconsciously wrapped around one of Damien's fingers. Completely trusting. Completely safe. You love him very much. Damien didn't answer immediately. Instead, he brushed a loose curl away from Noah's forehead with extraordinary care. Finally, he spoke. He is the only reason I still remember who I am. The sentence lingered between us. Heavy. Honest. And before I could think of anything to say, I noticed 3 men emerge quietly from the business class cabin. Dark suits. Earpieces. Watchful eyes. They weren't looking at the passengers. They were looking only at Damien. The moment he saw them, every trace of softness disappeared. His shoulders straightened. His jaw hardened. His expression became unreadable once more. One of the men leaned down and whispered just 4 words into his ear. We've landed, sir. Everything's ready. In that instant, I realized the exhausted widowed father sitting beside me was a man surrounded by a world far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The private terminal was quieter than the airplane. Too quiet. The polished marble floors reflected the soft afternoon light pouring through walls of glass. Expensive luggage rolled silently across the floor. Every employee smiled with practiced professionalism. Yet the moment Damien stepped off the jet bridge, the atmosphere changed. Not because anyone greeted him, because everyone noticed him. The 3 men who had approached him on the plane spread out without exchanging a single word. One moved ahead. One stayed behind. The third walked beside Damien, his eyes constantly scanning the room. Security. Professional. Disciplined. Dangerous. I tightened my grip on my carry-on. Whatever Damien did for a living, it clearly wasn't ordinary. He looked back once. Only once. Our eyes met across the terminal. He gave me the smallest nod. A silent thank you. Then disappeared through a set of private security doors. I smiled to myself. Some people enter your life for 5 minutes. 5 minutes can still leave fingerprints on your heart. An hour later, I was outside Logan International Airport waiting for a rideshare. Rain had started falling. Thin. Cold. The kind that soaked your jacket before you realized it. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from my sister. 1 message. Lily refuses to sleep until she hugs you. I laughed. That sounded exactly like my daughter. Before I could reply, a black luxury SUV rolled quietly to the curb. It wasn't my rideshare. The rear passenger window lowered halfway. One of the suited men from the airplane sat inside. Ms. Carter. My stomach tightened. Yes. Our employer would like to thank you properly. I'm fine. He opened the rear door. Please. No. His expression remained polite. Mr. Romano insists. I don't know Mr. Romano. You helped his son. I did. And I'm happy I did. I smiled as kindly as I could. But I don't accept rewards. The man studied me. Perhaps he wasn't used to hearing that word. No. He reached into his jacket. Not for a weapon. For a business card. He handed it to me with both hands. If you ever need anything. I glanced down. The card was surprisingly plain. No company logo. No title. Only a name. Damien Romano. And a phone number. No address. No email. Nothing else. I looked back up. I'm afraid you've wasted the trip. You haven't even looked him up. I don't intend to. That answer seemed to confuse him more than refusing the ride. Most people would. I'm not most people. For the first time, the bodyguard smiled. A genuine smile. I can see that. The window closed. The SUV pulled away into the rain. I slipped the card into the outside pocket of my backpack without another thought. By the time I reached home, the apartment smelled like tomato soup and fresh bread. Lily launched herself into my arms before I could even close the front door. Mommy, I laughed as she wrapped her tiny arms around my neck. I missed you too, Bug. She pulled back and frowned. You smell like airplanes. I probably do. And rain. Definitely rain. My sister rolled her eyes from the kitchen. Next time, take a vacation instead of another conference. I'll consider it. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep with her favorite stuffed rabbit tucked beneath her chin, I quietly unpacked my suitcase. Conference notes. Laundry. Books. Receipts. Then, a folded white scarf. The same scarf Noah had fallen asleep beneath. I smiled before placing it inside the top drawer of my dresser. Some memories deserve to stay simple. Some people were meant to remain strangers. I truly believed that. Until 3 mornings later. I arrived at the pediatric therapy center carrying my usual coffee. The receptionist looked up the moment I walked in. Oh, Olivia. Her voice sounded unusually nervous. There's someone waiting for you. I followed her gaze toward the lobby. Standing beside the large front window, holding Noah in his arms, was Damien Romano. This time, he hadn't come to say thank you. He had come looking for me. For a moment, I wondered if I was imagining him. Damien Romano didn't belong in places like Bright Horizons Pediatric Therapy Center. The walls were painted with smiling giraffes and watercolor rainbows. Tiny shoes lined the entrance. Children's laughter drifted from the sensory gym down the hall. Nothing about this place fit the man standing perfectly still beside the window. He looked almost uncomfortable. No tailored overcoat today. Just dark jeans, black boots, and a fitted charcoal sweater that couldn't quite hide the tattoos climbing beneath the sleeves. No bodyguards in sight. Only Noah sleeping peacefully against his shoulder. When Damien noticed me, he offered a polite nod. Good morning. You found me. I hope you don't mind. I wasn't expecting this. I know. There was something oddly hesitant about him now. Nothing like the man who had silently commanded an entire airport terminal. I owe you another thank you. You already thanked me. It wasn't enough. Before I could answer, Noah stirred. His sleepy blue eyes blinked open. For one brief second, he looked confused. Then he saw me. His entire face lit up. A tiny smile spread across his cheeks. He reached both arms toward me without the slightest hesitation. Damien looked down, then back at me. He never does that. I laughed softly. Maybe he remembers the airplane. No. His voice carried quiet disbelief. He remembers you. Without thinking, I reached for Noah. Damien hesitated only a heartbeat before placing the little boy into my arms. Noah immediately rested his head against my shoulder. Relaxed. Content. Safe. The change happened so naturally that neither of us spoke. Across the reception desk, 2 therapists exchanged curious glances. One whispered, "Is that her husband?" The other quietly answered, "I've never seen him before." I almost smiled. If only they knew. Noah reached for the silver necklace around my neck, gently rubbing the small pendant between his fingers. A familiar sensory behavior. He likes repetitive textures, I said. Damien watched carefully. You noticed that too? I noticed it on the plane. He always plays with his blanket before sleeping. That helps him regulate. He frowned slightly. Regulate. Nervous systems don't always calm themselves the same way. I walked slowly toward the waiting area, gently rocking Noah with small, steady movements. Some children need quiet. Some need pressure. Some need routines. And some simply need to feel safe. Damien listened without interrupting. Every word seemed to matter. I've read parenting books. I hired specialists. I've tried everything. His voice lowered. But no one ever explained it like that. Because they're trying to fix him. I smiled down at Noah. He doesn't need fixing. Damien followed my gaze. What does he need? I answered without looking up. Someone willing to understand his world instead of forcing him into ours. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable. Thoughtful. After a long moment, Damien quietly admitted, I don't know how. Most parents don't. That finally made him smile. A real smile. Small. Almost shy. It changed his entire face. For just an instant, he looked younger. Less guarded. Less lonely. The receptionist approached carefully. Olivia, your 9 o'clock family is here. I glanced toward the hallway. Duty called. I reluctantly handed Noah back. The little boy frowned immediately. His tiny fingers clung to my sleeve. Damien gently loosened them. We have to let Miss Olivia work. Noah whimpered. Not crying. Simply disappointed. Damien noticed it too. He doesn't usually become attached this quickly. I shrugged. Children choose people for reasons adults rarely understand. He studied me for several quiet seconds before speaking again. I have a proposal. I instantly shook my head. I'm not becoming a nanny. His eyebrows lifted slightly. I wasn't going to ask that. Now it was my turn to feel embarrassed. What were you going to ask? I was hoping. He paused, choosing his words with unexpected care. That you might teach me. Teach you what? How to become the father my son already believes I am. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated inside my pocket. It was my sister. 3 missed calls. 1 urgent message. Call me immediately. Someone has been asking questions about you and Lily. My smile disappeared the instant I read the message. Someone has been asking questions about you and Lily. The words replayed in my mind like an echo. Too vague. Too specific. I excused myself and stepped into the empty hallway before calling my sister. She answered on the first ring. Olivia. Her voice was tense. What happened? I don't know. That's not helping. This morning a man came to Lily's preschool. My pulse quickened. What man? The office said he was well-dressed. Mid-40s. Said he was confirming emergency contact information. I froze. They gave him anything? No. They called me first. I closed my eyes in relief. But then he waited outside the school for almost 20 minutes. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Did anyone speak to him? No. He eventually drove away. What kind of car? I don't remember. She hesitated. Olivia. Yeah. I don't think he was lost. Neither did I. I ended the call slowly. When I turned around, Damien was standing a few feet away. He hadn't been trying to listen, but one look at my face told him enough. What happened? It's nothing. It isn't. I looked toward Noah, happily stacking colorful wooden blocks on the waiting room carpet. I lowered my voice. Someone was asking about my daughter. His expression changed instantly. The warmth vanished. What exactly do you mean? I repeated everything my sister had told me. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he asked only one question. When did this happen? This morning. His jaw tightened. This morning. He glanced briefly toward the front windows before pulling a phone from his pocket. Marco. His voice was calm. Too calm. I need everything. A pause. Every security camera within 3 blocks of Bright Horizons. Another pause. And the preschool on Willow Street. He listened. No. His eyes narrowed slightly. Don't involve the police. My heart skipped. Police? Why wouldn't anyone involve the police? He ended the call and slipped the phone away. I think you're overreacting, I said. I hope I am. You don't even know who the man was. No. But I know patterns. What patterns? He looked directly into my eyes. The kind that begin with questions. I crossed my arms. Damien, I appreciate your concern, but my life isn't connected to yours. He remained silent. So whoever this man was, it has nothing to do with you. He didn't answer. That silence frightened me more than any words could have. Finally, he spoke. Olivia. What? How many people knew you were on that flight? I don't know. Hundreds. No. He shook his head once. How many people knew you? Calm Noah. I opened my mouth, then stopped. The passengers. The crew. The private terminal. His security team. Anyone watching. The realization made my stomach turn. You think someone saw us? I know someone did. Before I could respond, the front door opened. A delivery driver walked inside carrying 2 large flower arrangements. Package for Olivia Carter. The receptionist smiled. Oh, how sweet. I wasn't smiling. Neither was Damien. The driver placed the flowers on the reception desk. No card was visible. Just white lilies. Beautiful. Elegant. Wrong. Damien stepped forward before anyone else could touch them. Don't. Everyone looked at him. He carefully examined the arrangement without laying a hand on it. His eyes settled on something tucked beneath the ribbon. A tiny black envelope. He removed it slowly. Opened it. Read the single sentence inside. For the first time since I'd met him, I watched genuine fear cross Damien Romano's face. Without saying a word, he handed me the card. It contained only 7 typed words. We know who comforts the little prince. I read the sentence 3 times. We know who comforts the little prince. 7 words. No signature. No threat. Yet every person standing around the reception desk suddenly felt very far away. The children's laughter drifting from the therapy room. The cheerful music playing through the ceiling speakers. The smell of crayons and fresh coffee. None of it seemed real anymore. I looked up at Damien. Who sent this? I don't know. But you have an idea. His silence answered before he did. He folded the card once and slipped it into his pocket. We're leaving. The certainty in his voice irritated me. I'm not going anywhere. You are. I have patience. They can be rescheduled. You don't get to make that decision. His jaw tightened. I do if someone's watching this building. I stared at him. You still haven't explained who you really are. He glanced toward Noah. The little boy was happily rolling a toy truck across the waiting room floor, completely unaware that the adults around him had stopped breathing. Damien lowered his voice. My business has enemies. I figured that much. They don't usually involve children. Usually? The word slipped out before I could stop it. He closed his eyes for a brief moment. I've spent years making sure Noah stayed invisible. And now someone knows the only stranger he ever trusted. I felt my pulse in my throat. You think this is because of me? No. It's because of me. For the first time since we'd met, there wasn't a trace of pride in his voice. Only guilt. Heavy. Unmistakable. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated again. My sister. This time she didn't text. She called. I answered immediately. Emily. Her breathing was uneven. Olivia. What happened? I just picked Lily up. My heart skipped. Is she okay? Yes. But. She hesitated. There was a black SUV parked across the street. Every muscle in Damien's body stiffened. It left when I drove away. I felt the blood drain from my face. Did anyone follow you? I don't know. I took 3 different turns. It's gone now. I thanked her and ended the call. Neither Damien nor I spoke. He already knew. Someone wasn't interested in me. Someone was interested in the people I loved. Without another word, Damien pulled out his phone again. Marco. His voice became cold. I need the convoy. A pause. Now. Another pause. No delays. He hung up and looked directly at me. You have exactly 60 seconds. For what? To decide whether you trust me. I barely know you. I know. And that's exactly why you still have a choice. I folded my arms. What happens if I say no? His answer came quietly. I'll still put people around your daughter. I don't want bodyguards. You won't even know they're there. I don't want strangers following Lily. They won't be following her. He held my gaze. They'll be following anyone who gets too close. The calmness in his voice frightened me more than anger ever could. You can't control my life. No. I can only protect it. The automatic doors slid open. 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot almost simultaneously. Not speeding. Not making a scene. Simply arriving with terrifying precision. 6 men stepped out. Dark suits. Earpieces. Calm expressions. Each moved with practiced discipline. Parents in the parking lot barely noticed them. Damien did. He scanned every rooftop. Every parked vehicle. Every reflection in the clinic windows. Only then did I understand. This wasn't a performance. This was habit. The habit of a man who expected danger every time he stepped outside. One of the security men approached and quietly handed Damien a small tablet. He studied the screen for less than 5 seconds. Then his eyes hardened. He turned the display toward me. A grainy surveillance image filled the screen. It showed the entrance to Lily's preschool that morning. Standing across the street, watching the children, was the same man who had handed flowers to the reception desk less than 20 minutes earlier. I had spent my entire life teaching frightened children how to feel safe. Now I was the one whose hands wouldn't stop trembling. The surveillance photo remained on the tablet between Damien and me. The man outside Lily's preschool. The delivery driver. Same face. Same coat. Same expression. Watching. Waiting. Calculating. I looked up. What does he want? Damien answered honestly. I don't know. You always seem to know. Not this time. That frightened me even more. One of the security men stepped closer. Sir. Damien glanced at him. The vehicles are ready. He nodded, then turned back to me. You and Lily can't go home. I laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because the sentence sounded impossible. I have bills. I have patience. My daughter's clothes are in our apartment. And someone may already know where that apartment is. I can't disappear. You don't have to disappear. He paused. You just have to stay alive. The words hung in the air. Simple. Terrifying. I looked toward the therapy room. Tiny children were painting paper butterflies at a long wooden table. One little boy proudly held up blue paint-covered hands. His mother laughed. Normal life. 5 steps away. My world had already stopped feeling normal. I need to pick up Lily. I already arranged it. I stared at him. You what? My people are escorting your sister now. You had no right. No. I had no time. Anger flared inside me. You don't get to make decisions for my family. I know. But if I'm wrong. He looked directly into my eyes. You'll never have to forgive me. And if you're right, his answer barely rose above a whisper. You'll still have your daughter. I wanted to argue. I wanted to walk away. Instead, I looked at Noah. He was sitting on the carpet, laughing as one of the therapists rolled a soft foam ball toward him. Completely innocent. Completely unaware that his father had built his entire life around protecting him. Suddenly I understood something. Damien wasn't trying to control me. He was repeating the only language his world had ever taught him. Protect first. Explain later. A black SUV stopped directly outside the entrance. The rear door opened. Marco stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, quiet. He approached Damien without hurry. We found the sedan. And it was abandoned. No prints. No plates. Professional. Clean. Deliberate. Damien's expression darkened. They're testing us. Marco nodded once. I believe so. Testing. Not attacking. Not yet. The realization chilled me. Someone wanted Damien to know they could reach the people around him. Without warning, Noah stood up. His little legs carried him across the waiting room. Past the toys. Past Marco. Past Damien. Straight toward me. He wrapped both tiny arms around my knees. Then rested his cheek against my leg. The room fell silent. Marco looked away politely. The receptionist smiled without understanding what she had witnessed. Damien simply watched. There was sadness in his eyes. And gratitude. He always chooses, he said quietly. What do you mean? He decides who feels safe. I bent down and gently brushed Noah's hair away from his forehead. He giggled, then reached for my hand. So, Damien continued softly. I'm asking you something I never thought I'd ask anyone. I looked up. What? Come with us. I froze. Not forever. Just until I know who's behind this. The old Olivia would have refused. Immediately. But then I imagined Lily walking out of preschool tomorrow, looking for me, completely unaware that a stranger had already memorized her face. My resistance cracked. Not because I trusted Damien. Because I trusted the fear in his eyes. I slowly nodded once. Only until Lily is safe. Relief crossed his face so quickly that most people would have missed it. I give you my word. As we walked toward the waiting SUVs, Noah reached up with one tiny hand. Without thinking, Damien took one side. I took the other. The little boy smiled between us as if this strange arrangement had always existed. As if, somewhere deep inside him, he already believed we were walking home together. People often ask me when I stopped being afraid. They always expect the answer to be after the danger was over. The truth is, fear didn't disappear. Love simply became louder. The first night inside Damien's estate, I barely slept. It wasn't because the house was unfamiliar. It was because it was impossibly quiet. No shouting. No chaos. No extravagant parties. Just the soft ticking of antique clocks and the distant sound of ocean waves beyond the cliffs. Nothing about the place resembled the stories people whispered about powerful men. Lily fell asleep almost immediately in a bedroom overlooking the water, clutching her stuffed rabbit beneath her chin. Noah slept across the hall. For the first time since the airplane, he rested through the entire night without crying. I found Damien alone on the back terrace just before sunrise. He stood with a mug of untouched coffee, watching the horizon where the sky slowly turned gold. You should try sleeping, I said. He smiled faintly. I forgot how. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. Finally, he broke it. Marco found the man. I felt my heartbeat quicken. And he wasn't working alone. My fingers tightened around the warm cup in my hands. They've been watching Noah for months. I closed my eyes. Because of your business? Because they wanted leverage. He looked down. They thought my son was my greatest weakness. I glanced toward the upstairs windows where 2 small children were still sleeping. They were wrong. He looked at me, confused. They're not your weakness. They're your reason. For the first time since we'd met, Damien's eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. I spent years believing I had to become harder to protect him. And now, you showed me something stronger. He looked toward Noah's room. Peace. Just then, tiny footsteps echoed across the wooden floor behind us. Lily wandered onto the terrace, rubbing her sleepy eyes. She stopped when she saw Damien. There was an awkward silence. Children notice everything, especially kindness. Damien slowly crouched to her height. Good morning. Lily looked at him for several seconds before asking the question only a 5-year-old would dare to ask. Are you the sad man from Mommy's airplane? I covered my mouth to hide a smile. Damien blinked. Then, he laughed. A real laugh. Deep, warm, unpracticed. I think I was. Lily nodded thoughtfully. You don't look as sad today. Before Damien could answer, another small voice joined us. Dad. Noah stood in the doorway holding onto the frame for balance. His sleepy eyes searched the terrace. Then he saw me. Mama. The word escaped his lips so naturally that time seemed to stop. No one corrected him. No one moved. Noah smiled and toddled toward us with both little hands stretched forward. Lily instinctively took one of his hands. I took the other. Damien stood watching us, unable to speak. Tears finally escaped despite every effort to hide them. Months later, the investigators would uncover enough evidence to end the threats surrounding Noah and my family. Life slowly returned to something resembling ordinary. But the moment I remember most has nothing to do with danger. It's another flight. 1 year later, Noah slept peacefully with his head resting against my shoulder. Lily was drawing clouds in a coloring book. Damien sat beside us, his tattooed hand quietly intertwined with mine. No crying, no fear, only home. Sometimes people think miracles happen because someone powerful changes the world. I learned the opposite. Sometimes, the world changes because one exhausted mother stands up on an airplane and chooses to comfort a child she has never met. And sometimes, that single act of kindness becomes the safest place for lonely hearts will ever call home.